Good morning. Hello. If you're just joining the live or watching the playback, please type in the chat, say hello wherever you're watching this. I am just getting started. I'm going to talk about your power portal that's been activated through this eclipse time. And I did a collective read for anyone who's watching this. And I'm going to be sharing that and also talking about some of the offerings that I have available during this powerful time and what this powerful time could mean for you energetically. So I first want to say that if you already know a little bit about this eclipse, great, because I'm not going to go into a lot about this particular eclipse season. I do want to say, as I've been saying, that we've been really activated through the heart and through the throat. And we have been in this cycle with Taurus really playing a large part of this, like for the past few years, but particularly in this last summer with Venus retrograde stirring up a lot. And then coming into this time where we have both the eclipses in signs that are ruled by Venus is forcing us into our heart. It's forcing us into our heart, into our truth through our throat chakra. So those two areas are really going to be highlighted when you're thinking about these eclipse times and what's kind of churning for you within you and what power you maybe have been avoiding that you're being asked to step into in a greater capacity. So we had just had the solar eclipse in Libra. I've talked a lot about that in other posts, so I'm not going to go into it here. I didn't do a live on it though. I've actually been taking a break from doing lives. This is the first live I've done in a bit. I've been being asked to kind of lean back a bit, share less, be in a different place. And it's really powerful when we listen to those insights. And I also felt compelled today to just share a little bit about the overall energies for this October because it is so powerful and because so many people are being triggered into fear. I felt a bigger call to kind of say hello and talk about this power portal and the opportunity that's here that you could miss if you're being distracted by a lot of external noise, a lot of rightly so traumatizing stuff that's happening in our world that for a lot of us feels kind of out of our hands. And that feeling like things are out of our hands that are triggering us and that are very upsetting can cause us to lose a lot of our own life force energy. And so I just want to remind you to kind of just be in awareness of what is in your control, what isn't in your control. And if you have people depending on you, specifically, your children or, whoever you serve, if paying attention to certain things that are out of your control are keeping you from those immediate relationships, if it's keeping you from being able to be in the present and be with your people and be with your service and with your heart work in this world, really review that and really think about ways that you can stay attuned to your immediate surroundings and sending up if you don't believe in prayer, sending up intention, sending up whatever you feel called to do. But just be aware of that because there are so many things that can scoop us up and take us away from ourselves. And oftentimes during these eclipse portals, and especially as we're coming into this next year of going into, a big election time and a lot of forces that want to divide and split people, it's so important to really pay attention to what is being asked of you in highest good from your higher self. And so as you're kind of coming into this power portal of being between the eclipses, it's really important to call your energy back to yourself and to really notice where you're losing your life force energy in whatever's around you, our phones, the media, those kinds of things. Good morning. Hi. If you're still here, you can type in the chat and say hello. I'll say hello back. So I did a collective reading. I'm going to get to that in a moment for all of us that are wanting to be in our own power, wanting to use that power for good, for helping others, serving others, being a creator in our world. So I will get to that in a moment, but I do want to say, as we are in between these eclipses, as we will be coming upon the Taurus full moon lunar eclipse on October 28th, we just want to be aware that any intensity that you felt at this solar eclipse, although this solar eclipse is going to be more powerful when you think about eclipse wise, also recognize that is the seeding. So like the Libra eclipse that we had is the seeding for the full moon. So really taking good care of yourself, taking good care of your throat in particular. Taurus is about our throat and our communication and our safety and our security. Things that need to be said, things that need to be spoken are going to be coming through at this time. And it's so important to listen to those things and learn how to process emotion around the things that need to be said in a way that serves ourselves, so that when we do go to speak our truth, when we go to communicate, it's not packed full of our own triggers and traumas, which is how most people communicate, is by not being able to process those things, so that when we go into interactions, it's got all of this baggage along with it, and we can't quite connect with each other because we're all coming from our own trauma in things. And so of course, if you're coming from your own trauma in things, no one else can meet you in that or support you in that unless you're willing to look at that and willing to be made aware of where some of your feeling about the things that need to be said are coming from. So this is really important when we're looking at interpersonal relationships, but also collectively, because we are in a time where, I did a whole video on the Aries North Node, and the Aries North Node, a few things to keep in mind that some of you know, is that Aries it's the in traditional astrology, it talks about like the Lord of War is the ruler of Aries. And so it's very important to understand aggression and where your aggression comes from, to understand your own Mars placement and have an understanding of what that means in your own life, what battles you are willing and wanting to fight and for what cause, and what battles you are not supposed to be fighting. Because if you look at our world right now, your dharma and your karma is not tied up into some of the interactions that still make you feel really bad to look at or to feel into, but it doesn't mean that it's your battle. If everything was your battle, we wouldn't survive, right? Like if you were meant to fight every battle, you wouldn't survive. So part of being a spiritual warrior is knowing what battles you're supposed to fight and what battles you're supposed to sit your ass down for. And that becomes really challenging when there are all these trauma triggers in our societal like news and programming. Also understand that when there's any kind of conflict, like the last two big conflicts that we've seen in the world, there's a lot of money grabs happening behind the scenes. We know this, and this is a lot of what kind of we're not exposed to. And this is where like we are moving away from the Scorpio South Node and we're moving into the Libra South Node. And Libra South Node has to do with, and we're in that now, but we have been, and this is the last eclipse that will take place in the Taurus Scorpio arena. So basically it's going to expose and show us some of those things, and hopefully more people will acknowledge and be willing to look at these things. Who knows, right? But because Taurus and Scorpio have to do with money, have to do with financial institutions and those kinds of things, this full moon is going to have that focus for everyone. And it's just to be aware of, like, if you have been, we've been in somewhat of a recession, and some people are making way more money than they ever have, and some people are making a lot less money than they're used to. And it's really important to understand that this is the last eclipse in that cycle. So wherever you kind of are on that spectrum, just know and understand that this is the last eclipse lunation for the next, well, in this capacity for the next 18 years, but for the next 9 years in the Scorpio, Taurus areas. So look at that area of your chart. We are definitely moving out of that energy, but we have Jupiter there, we have Uranus still there. And so this last full moon does pack quite a significant punch. And so when we're looking at the activation of our own personal power within this, look at where, these are in your chart and see like where you've grown and where you've noticed coming into more consciousness in these areas of the Scorpio Taurus area, because this is the last eclipse that'll happen there. So that is the eclipse on October 28th. But for now, we're in between the eclipses. It's a really powerful time. And one of the things that I want to talk about is the spread that I did for anybody watching this, and also ways to work with me. So we'll go over this, and then I'll talk about different ways that we can work together if you're interested. And let's get started. So the first card that I pulled here for the collective read is what is being asked to clear out with this eclipse season. And some of you will be happy to know that what's being cleared out is stress. So if you've been under a significant amount of stress in these last 6 months, this is a time where that's clearing. How do we make that clear, or how do we help in that process of coming into our own power in allowing this to clear, is to really recognize where you're getting yourself spun out, where you're losing energy, where you are overgiving, where you're oversharing, and where you're not open to receiving. So really maybe journal on this. Look at where things tend to really stress you out and what you can do to modify some behaviors around that. What's emerging from the release of stress is the Tower, which I'm like, it's actually a perfect card because, Uranus and Taurus at this full moon, it's not going to be exactly conjunct. It's actually not conjunct at all, but it's still in the same sign. And so when it's in the same sign, of course, it's going to have an impact. And the Tower really is signified by Uranus in astrology. And the Tower is letting what needs to fall away, not gripping so tight to things that aren't working or that need to be released. So it's really important to let the relationship fall apart, let the job fall apart, let the, whatever it is, let it go so that you can start fresh. And whatever that means for you, obviously everybody's getting triggered in different ways. And again, look to your Taurus house in particular to see where you've been fighting for something to work, like where you've been really gripping on to something to work. And at this time, it's like, just let it go. So, I have a whole video. I have so many videos on my YouTube about the not so current astrology, but that's still in place. So I think it's from 2018. I did a video on Uranus and Taurus, which will still be applicable and goes house by house. So you really might want to look at that. I'll try to post it to my story later today, because going house by house and knowing where your Taurus house is going to help you so much in understanding this next eclipse that we're moving into. Okay. And it is a partial eclipse, but because we started with the solar eclipse and this will be the full lunation of that, it's going to be intense. And they are both ruled by Venus, so which has to do with our desires and our heart, and really moving into our desires and moving away from our fears at this time. And this is such an important time to do that, because there's a lot to be afraid of if you choose to go that way, right? Harmonizing your relationships will require this from you. This is a fun card for this. So it's the Manifesta card. It is about manifesting, how you want to be in relationships, kind of coming back to what I was speaking to you about our traumas and triggers coming into our communication in relationships. This is a lot of the time the degradation of a relationship is not being able to communicate clearly about your needs, desires, and what you want to see in the relationships. Instead, we tend to focus on what's not working, where our partner needs to do better, needs to change, needs to do something different. And if we want successful relationships in all ways, friendships, intimate partnership, relationships with our clients, relationships with our coworkers. If we want that to go well, we have to be willing to see things in a different way and manifest the type of relationships that we want to see. And part of manifesting the types of relationships that we want to see is believing that we can have the type of relationships that we desire. So it's a really huge time for that. And you're being guided into the Three of Cups energy, which is about celebration. It's about community. It's about kind of just carefree good times. So that's really exciting, and how lovely to be in that energy, right? So fortifying this path forward is going to require from you this inner trust. And so I was talking a lot about in these last few days, there was so much in my media in particular, because I follow a lot of astrology accounts, or people that follow astrology accounts. So in a lot of like my friends' stories or different people's things, I was seeing all types of like expert, famous astrologers saying all types of crazy shit about why to be afraid of this eclipse, why to not manifest during this time. And it was kind of shocking. And it was also such a great opportunity to talk about inner trust and trusting your own inner voice and trusting what you feel like it's a good time for. And I think that part of the reason people become famous or popular in certain genres is because they tend to trigger people's fear. And so this is such a great time for you to look at and understand, like, what is it that I like about, you know, certain situations or certain people or certain movies or certain interactions or people that I follow? Is it that they ignite in me inner trust? Or is it that they ignite in me some type of fear, but that kind of gets me addicted and makes me want to like see more? And so it's just such a good opportunity at this time to redirect yourself and to really come into your own inner trust and pay attention to, like, what are the places where you notice that you feel better about yourself after doing something, after being with certain people, after, you know, doing an activity. And really try to make space in your life in these next few weeks in particular to really honor those and really build from those, because this is a really powerful time to manifest. It's actually more powerful than any other lunar cycle that we have. Eclipse times happen every 6 months, and at those 6 months, they set the whole cycle for the next 6 months. So, and also, like, in that, there's certain cycles that are happening that are bigger than the 6 month cycle. So we are now, you know, we just moved this last May, we just moved into the Aries North Node, Libra South Node, and we'll be there for the next year or so. And so during that time, those 18-month cycle are also going to mirror an 18-month cycle in your life. So certain people, like my daughter, who I can't believe is, you know, coming into this time where she's having her nodal return. And our nodal return happens every 18 years or so, as she's 17. So it's like an 18-month period. And during that 18-month period, you are going to go through a nodal return. A nodal opposition happens every 9 years. So it's really important to understand that where you are and where your nodes are. I just talked to a friend this morning, and she was like, wow, I just realized I was 18 at this last eclipse time, like that was in South Node Libra. And I was like, oh, well, that means that you're in your nodal return. So it's kind of cool to pay attention to that, because if you're feeling extra, you know, extra energy with this eclipse cycle, it could be a lot of different things, and this is why it's such a great time to get an astrological session with me. But it could also mean that you are either in a nodal return or a nodal opposition. So look at your chart. If you don't understand your chart, get a chart reading. I am offering a special on astrological sessions with me, hour-long sessions with me. If you click the link in my profile, you can sign up for that. And if you use code Venus, it's $111 off, so it makes the session $222 instead of $333. And that includes a full astrological session with me, and it does go into some of the somatic work with your chart. And a lot of people get confused about why I combine somatic work with your astrological chart. It's because anything that is out there is also in here, and anything that is influencing you from an outer scope is also happening from the inner scope. So we want to dive into that inner scope, because that's where you have awareness, and that's where you have feeling, and that's where you have energy, and that's where you have an emotional charge and a trigger likely. And so when we can, going back to kind of what I was sharing earlier about your triggers and those kinds of things, if we can go into the body and listen to those triggers and deconstruct them and unbind certain experiences. So when things are bound up within you, they often can cause harm in your reality. They can be like, why is this thing always happening? Or why are relationships always hard for me? Or why is this thing always hard for me? Typically it's because there's a double bind happening, where there's a belief tied up into a somatic experience in your body. And so when we go in and we can look at those, and we can feel into those, and we can alchemize those, all of a sudden things are different. And it's a really magical process that anyone can do. But I feel really strongly about holding that safe space for you to do that with me. If you're interested in that, just click the link in my profile, or you can DM me if you feel called to do that. I am going to go drink the rest of my tea, and I hope that you have a beautiful morning. If you see this posted to my page, please give it a like or a share if you feel inspired to. Take good care. Bye-bye.